Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get to our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Janine Shaw on the podcast. She's a master trainer as well as a bodybuilding specialist. She's also a certified specialist in sports nutrition. She's coming to us all the way from Miami, Florida. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Janine, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Ryan.
Well, I first of all got to ask, what's the weather like in Florida today?
Humid, and if you go outside, you can probably grow some leaves on you.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little jealous of that weather right now, just because in Minnesota it is starting to get pretty cold. But hey, before I depress everyone with my weather woes, why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on what inspired and what motivated you to get in shape and adapt this lifestyle?
Well, I would have to blame that all on my brother. My brother, yes, had gotten me into the world of bodybuilding probably at the age of 15. My brother was actually a professional power lifter. And he used to train at a gym called Ironman, which was like practically the only gym here in Miami at the time, way down south, where you never ever saw a female in the gym. That's what it was like for me back then. So he would take me along with him and he showed me the ropes and I got hooked right away. And I've been probably active all my life. As a child, I was a gymnast and I competed in school. So that was like mainly my background. And then he introduced me to bodybuilding, which helped so much with my gymnastics and everything overall to get stronger. So it's his fault. And I never stopped from there.
Well, that's awesome, and I always say, just that background in other sports. I mean, we've had a lot of ex-gymnasts come on, or swimmers. I find that that's about half the guests that I have on. So that I do find that having that background really does help when it comes to getting started in bodybuilding. But a question that I love to ask all my health and fitness guests, because I always say, if you were to walk into a gym with 100 people, there's 100 different ways as to how those people got into shape. Whether it comes down to, the diet, their nutrition, how many reps they do, what exercises they do. So many little things add up to the overall package that people end up seeing. Was that a struggle for you, sort of figuring out what worked best for your body? Because I always say, if you were to walk up to someone and say, hey, what'd you train for that body part? It looks amazing. What works best for them 99% of the time might not work as good for you.
Of course. And again, of course, you can't like spot treat anything. But, it comes together as a whole, like the whole entire picture. So, with me, I would say that, it's just a conglomeration of different exercises. I'm sort of the old school type of bodybuilder. I still believe in the heavy lifting, that it's really important in order for you to grow. And also that goes hand in hand with your nutrition as well. So I think it's just like I said, like an eclectic way to for like your body, like how my body reacted to all the different exercises that I do. And then if I stick to the same thing over and over and over again, of course, like anybody else, they're going to plateau. So you do need to change your routine up, I would say, like every 4 weeks. And even though in your individual like days that you're training, maybe add a different exercise here and there. But most of all, I do like to change up my routine because my body responds better that way.
I've always found that I also suffered through a little bit of a plateau effect where, just with all the working out that you do, if you do the same thing twice, or if you do the same, it really just affects your overall, what it looks like and how your body is able to adapt and make changes. So yeah, I highly do recommend, mixing things up as well. But I always find that when everyone walks into the gym, no matter what you start out with before, everyone always has that one body part that really takes off. And then everyone also has that one body part that's just legs behind that they have to train into oblivion. I'll give you mine first. My back, I had jobs all throughout college of lifting and loading, trucks and cars and lifting heavy packages in there. So you either got a really nice back or you quit. Those are basically the two options that were presented to you. But I'm also 6'3". So, my legs and my lower body are just shot where, I have to train them into overdrive just to get them to look like any semblance like I work out. I still have those friends that still say, hey, Ryan, you ever plan on training legs anytime this year when I walk into the gym? And I'm just like, oh yeah, you guys are real. You guys, that's a good one. That's not it's about the 100th time you guys have told me that. But what were those body parts for you when you were getting started?
Okay, so as you know, because we're so tall, our limbs are a lot longer, so it's harder for us to build on that bulk muscle. Okay, so for me, I would say being a gymnast all my life, my arms were like, I could like go for weeks without working my arms and still be good with my triceps and my biceps. My abs, I've always had like, a six pack because maybe again due to all the training I did as a gymnast when I was younger. So I would say what my main detriment to me was the hamstrings and the glutes. That was the hardest part because I literally, as because I was a triathlete for 25 plus years. I did Ironmans. I've done the Boston Marathon. I qualified for it, and I ran it, and I also did my Ironman. So I basically ran off all my muscle, even though I was trying to strength train in between. I literally like just ate all my muscle through all the training and all the hours of training that I put into it. So I ran off my glutes and my hamstrings.
Now you mentioned your arms. Give us a flex. Let's see those guns. They're basically popping out of the camera. Look at that,
So,
everyone. That's insane. Now tell us. Now I was gonna wait until later, but tell us how old you are now.
okay, so January, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm going to be 53 years old, January 4th. Yeah, I'm going to cry.
And she has arms like that. Are you kidding me, everyone? That's just absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, I always say for me too. I mean, my legs and my lower body. I mean, my calves. I mean, that's the one body part that you can train to oblivion. And I always said I could inject pure muscle into my calves and they wouldn't grow. They wouldn't grow an inch. But you mentioned your height. So how tall are you?
Okay, so I'm 5'9".
Jeez.
Yes.
So now that brings me, I mean, I love having taller guests on because, being taller myself, like you said, we have our own problems. So what were some ways that you tried to build on the muscle as opposed to, let's say, because like if you're 5 feet tall, that's an easy way to build muscle. I mean, it's not hard at all. I mean, it's still, it takes the work, but it's just when you're taller, just with those lengthier muscles. So did you try things differently than other people that were maybe a different height to try to get your growth to catch up?
Well, of course, you know that I do have a coach, and my coach is Casey of Team Boss Bodies. She was the miracle worker with me to get my glutes and my hamstrings to grow. First of all, she fed me like there was no tomorrow. I ate, I mean, just when you're force feeding, you're eating, like, just to compensate for all the hours of training. So I'm not in it. My body's not in a deficit, a caloric deficit. So you need that to grow. So basically, that's what she did. It went hand in hand, and she really focused on my legs. But because being tall, and I'm Sicilian and Italian, so I had the bigger legs. My thighs were big, so she really like leaned out my legs through all the workouts that she did and she structured. And yes, I did a lot of my own workouts as well, but we really like pinpointed it. So that was my main concern. It was the thickness of my thighs. But I didn't have like the hamstring or the ham tie-in, but she got it. She got it with all the other isolation exercises that I thought I was doing, but I wasn't. So it's always good to have another like that guidance, and be directed from someone who knows what they're doing. Because I didn't just choose a coach just to choose, someone. I was very, skeptical about who I wanted to be with, and one of my very good friends was with her, and that's how I found her. So
That's why I always say, get a coach if you're going to get started. But I mean, we've had so many stories of people, just the benefits of getting a coach, and it just makes things so much easier, I think, on the person. But one of the training techniques that a lot of people swear by when they come on the show, and I wasn't even really aware of it until I started this podcast, because I was kind of like where you were when you started, where I just work out, I do, if I want to do legs today, I'll do legs. If I want to do arms, I mean, I'm a little bit more where I have a little bit planned out, but a little bit more free flowing. But time under tension is something that a lot of people swear by. Do you do a lot of time under tension in your training?
yes, I will mix things up. I love to use bands. I'll do a lot of time under tension. I do a lot of drop sets. Anything to, and then it's the squeeze. It's the 4 second count on the way down, the 4 second count on the way up. So it's always changing or trying to do something different. It's the stretch too. It's not always the time under tension, but the stretch. Get a good stretch to that muscle. Yeah. So
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's one thing that I wasn't really that familiar with, but then I saw, people practicing at my gym and I asked around and, I started asking on the podcast and yeah, for a lot of people, definitely look up time under tension because I really do think that it does benefit a lot of people and you don't have to, lift super heavy then and, risk injury. So that's again, one of the other benefits to it. But what would you say is probably the biggest nutritional change that you had to make going from before you started this journey to now? What would you say is probably the biggest thing?
I would probably say it was the amount of times that I had to eat during the day to, six, 5, 6 times a day and constantly being very mindful, So what I would do is I would set my alarm to go off as I would in my triathlon training. On my bike, I'd have an alarm go off on my watch every 15 seconds to remind me, or every 15 minutes to remind me to eat on the bike, every 2 hours, 2.5 hours to eat, and just being mindful and also eating a lot clean. I always ate clean, being Sicilian and Italian. We do eat, I grew up eating clean. There was broccoli, there was salad, there was, of course, the pasta and the spaghettis and the breads. But one thing that I did have to stop doing was my Italian bread, dunking that in the oil. That's what I did miss. But it was the amount of food that I had to eat, just being consistent to feed my body throughout the day. And that's what jump started my metabolism.
Yeah, you cannot tell by looking at me, but I'm actually an eighth Italian myself. I mean, I'm mainly
Yay!
Norwegian, but so yeah, when you're talking about the food, yeah, we still have that, about every Saturday night when we have everyone in town, yep, we have
Dinner.
it's yeah, and that's the hardest thing for me is like, yeah, it's hard to be in shape when you have that Italian background because just the food, it's definitely a struggle. Yeah, yeah.
It's incredible, incredible. But I do want to say though, I like now, I'm like I do eat those 6 meals, but with Casey, I like a very structured type of plan. I know a lot of people are into this if it fits your macros. I I don't want to like implicate anyone or like give a bad name to anyone, but I don't believe in the if it fits your macros because you could just like get all your macros in one meal and you can eat all the junk in the universe. Whereas I would rather eat very nutritious meals in large amounts that are filling me up throughout the day than just have one big giant junky meal. So that's why I'm not a fan of if it fits your macros. I believe in more structured type of planning.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, I've had guests come on that promote if it fits your macros. I've had guests that say, they don't like it. And I always say to everyone, just do your own research and make your own decision because,
Right.
it might work for someone else. It might not work for you, which is why I always like to say, you're basically like a mad scientist trying to concoct your own potion. I mean, you try to
Exactly.
find out what works best for you. And that's why, especially in this day and age where everyone compares themselves to everyone else, oh, I want his arms or I want her back or I want, everyone just wants that to look like that person, but they don't realize that, with genetics and training and their nutrition,
That's
you're
right.
not going to look like someone else. You just try to be the best version of yourself. So yeah,
That's it.
I know if I could scream that from the top of a mountain, I would. But a question that I also love to ask all of our health and fitness guests, because I mean, it's just so important. It's gotten better the last 5 years, I'd say, because of Instagram, but there's still just so many women that have that fear where if they pick up one weight, they do one push up, they do one pull up, they do anything, they're going to put on 50 pounds of muscle overnight. And I mean, I always say to that, you'd be the first ever trillionaire. Everybody and their brother. I mean, the government would kidnap you and probably like do genetic studies on you and just find out like how they could take your genes and transfer it to like everyone. So you would be like the biggest commodity of all time. Was that ever a struggle that you dealt with when you got started where you didn't want to get too big? And even if it wasn't, I mean, I bet being a trainer, you hear that all the time. How do you like to respond to that?
Well, when I first started, I still had the mindset of being a triathlete, where I couldn't put on a lot of muscle. Triathletes have to be lean. You can't be very bulky. You want to be light while you're, going all this distance. But then when I went into the gym, yes, I guess years ago I used to say I don't want to be big. I did say that, and now it's more. It's not being big. It's just the way your physique is looking, and I call it metamorphosizing. you know, I'd rather, as I'm aging and older, have that lean mass on me and eat properly instead of, and then because if not, as we age, it's the collagen we're lacking, and we start losing muscle mass by the I guess when we're in our 30s. I'm in exercise science right now. I'm finishing up my degree, and I've learned like so much about this. How important it is to keep bodybuilding at our age, because it is basically, my book always says it, it's the fountain of youth.
I totally couldn't agree with you more. And I always like to tell the story of when I was in college. I had a friend who, she said, Ryan, you're getting bigger and stronger. I see all these changes that you're making in the gym. I kind of want to go to the gym, but I'm afraid that I'm going to get too bulky and put on, too much muscle. And I told her, I said, look, the amount of weight that you carry in your purse when we go out to clubs or when we go out to get something to eat weighs more than 90% of the dumbbells in there. I mean, she had a really heavy purse. I don't know if she had a dead body in there or whatever. I mean, maybe she got mad at a sorority sister. I don't know. But it weighed at least, like 20, 25 pounds. And I was like, you lugging that thing around all the time. I mean, you're not putting on an ounce of muscle from that. And then that kind of made her realize, and, it's just so important to just dispel that. But one thing that I love to add on top of that question, because I find that it impacts women so much more positively than it does men, is the confidence boost that working out gives you. I mean, we have heard so many stories on this podcast of women who have, made life-changing decisions, just gotten that confidence boost, and it really just impacts their overall life. And I always said that's the one thing that you can take from the gym and use to impact every other aspect in your life. How have you personally taken that confidence boost that working out gives you and used it to help you in all your aspects in life?
Well, I would have to say that it actually helps me to deal with the things that are going that I'm dealing with in life. So my life is like ADD gone wild. That's what I call it. So if I don't get that small ounce, like that 2 hours, 2.5 hours of decompression daily, the stress levels just go up like threefold on me. And then I feel like I'm going backwards instead of going forwards. So it allows me to deal with like certain situations better. To focus better. I, I'm I don't. I mean, I don't know what more to say than it is a decompression for me. It really is.
Probably the most surprising aspect for me that I would have never guessed before I started talking to bodybuilders, before I really, you know, got into what the sport entailed. And what I think the general public doesn't understand is that for so many of these competitors, posing is the hardest thing. I mean, it's harder than your nutrition, it's harder than your working out. I mean, I like to compare it now to being a perfect driver, where you can be a great driver, you can never be a perfect driver, you can be a great poser, you can never be a perfect poser. It's always ever evolving. What has your experience with posing been like?
So posing for me has been rather difficult. Um, when I first started training, I hurt my back. Okay, and it took me probably about a year and a half to recover from that. I had terrible sciatic issues. It was awful. So I don't have the flexibility in my back, like say as I did as a kid being a gymnast today. So that has been like the hardest for me, like the back pose, to like for my back. Okay, but my coach has um, in our training sessions and our posing sessions that we have together has posed me in the right way where I'm going to look the best on stage with that type of pose. Instead of hurting my back, like she changed my side pose. I was posing, I think, on the left when I would first come out on stage. And now because I sit deeper into my hip on the right than I do on my left. My left is my tight side. That's like my weak link. So she changed my posing around and it was like night and day. I think my posing is getting a lot better and smoother. It's just my stage confidence. That's what I need to work on. Like I was just at a fashion show with my daughter. She did a for Paul Mitchell yesterday, and she just went right on that stage with the most stage confidence. It was just so natural. That's how I want to be on stage. Just where just I flow and I become one with the stage. So yes, every show it does get better, and my posing does get better, and and I am working on my flexibility. I stretch every single day. If I don't stretch and reset my back, it's like hell to pay. So yeah.
Yeah, it's just such an undervalued thing that so many people that aren't in the sport of bodybuilding don't realize. But out of your poses that you do, what is your favorite pose to do, and what is your least favorite pose to do?
Okay, so my favorite pose is when I first come out on stage. Actually, I have two favorites. I'm sorry. It's my first pose. It's my side pose, which I love because now when I've been working so hard, I'm finally getting a little booty. And then the second pose is my second side pose. It's like a transition. That those two poses I love. So the back pose, yes, it's rather uncomfortable for me because again, I don't have that flexibility like the other girls do. But yeah, those are my favorite poses.
One thing that we've heard a lot too is the transitions can be the worst thing for so many people just because that is a really hard thing to do, especially when you're in those high heels. What has your experience with those high heels been like?
Oh my goodness, my transitions. So, one time, well, a few times there was a rug, okay, for the transition. So I had to practice on. We have Berber rug in my home, so I had to keep practicing on that. It was hilarious how many times I tripped, and I actually did trip on stage one time. But you just have to keep going and not really show the judges that it's happened because they're really looking, like my coach always says, they're mostly looking at your posing. They're not going to look. Every girl trips. Every girl is like anxious. They're shaking on stage. They're basically looking at your physique and how you flow on, again, how you flow on stage. But like your little like trips and stuff. If there's a rug there, they know that rug is there, and a lot of girls' heels are going to get caught on that. So I don't know if they take that, into consideration as much as they do as your posing.
Well, again, that just adds on to, the checklist that I always say, these competitors have to go through to get on stage because, posing is hard enough as it is, but in those high heels, it becomes next to impossible. But another aspect of that posing is that you have to keep a smile, you have to keep a straight face. We had a guest from Australia come on, and she was talking about how she let her smile down for about 30 seconds, I think she said, when they were doing call outs, just because it just got to a point, and then she had a few points docked off because of that. And that's just another thing where, I mean, there's just so many little things in the sport that people don't realize. But when it comes also to the posing part, I mean, just practicing posing, I always say, so many people talk about how they get even more sore after posing sessions than they do after their actual workouts because it's just such a hard thing the body is not meant to be flexed in a state like that for that amount of time. How long did it take before you feel that your body got used to being in that state where things got easier, where you weren't as sore as you were before?
I would say, well, the thing is, I practice my posing when I get up in the morning for like 10 minutes. I go through all my poses. Then I practice again in the afternoon. This is in when I'm like very like when I'm about 6 weeks out from my show, and then at night, and then I do check-ins with my coach twice a week. So yes, the more I pose, the more flexible my body stays, I would have to say. But when I stop the posing and I start again, that's when I'm achy and things hurt. So before I'm getting into posing, you have to stretch your hips. You're doing like a dynamic stretching routine before getting into posing. Because if I just got up and started posing, I mean, I would hurt myself. I would pull something out. So just like training, you have dynamic stretching at the beginning of your sessions. So before I do my posing, I do like dynamic posing. So I'm nice and flexible. But that way, but normally my hip does kind of get aggravated a little bit, my right hip. But if I, stretch enough daily, then I'm good.
Yeah, and again, it's always a work in progress. You always have to keep working on your posing. You can never be perfect at it. But as you can tell, I'm one of the palest people that you'll ever meet in your entire life. I mean, my thick
So
Norwegian skin living up in the upper Midwest, I mean, I either get burnt to an absolute crisp or I get farmer's tan, where let's be honest, that's not a real tan. But bodybuilders get to get tan. What is that experience like for you when you get to get tan? I mean, we hear so many stories about how you really see muscles that you never even knew that you had. Everything really seems to pop out. What is that like for you when you get to look in the mirror and see that?
I think it's so cool when they do that first coat of tan because you've worked so hard up until that day. And I mean, I'm pale. I don't go out in the sun. Of course, I'm older. I don't want to get wrinkles or anything. But like I said, the spray tan, it's amazing. Like they'll put the mirror, like after you get the tan, they'll put the mirror in front of you, and you're like, oh my God, that's me. You see every little muscle pop, the striations, because the day before you're still filling in. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, and especially like the 8 pack or the 10 pack that you have. I mean, it's phenomenal. The process is amazing, amazing.
again, more power to the people that do this sport. But I always say it's a double-edged sword too, because I mean, when you get this tan on, you basically have to become a human statue. Where I mean, you can't sit on anything, you can't lean up against anything. I mean, we
Yeah.
hear so many stories of competitors having to bring their own bed sheets. I mean,
Yeah.
it really does come with the territory when you're adapting and doing this lifestyle. But a question that I ask all of my guests, whether they be, my up and coming bands and musicians or my bodybuilders for my bands and musicians, I always ask, what is that feeling like when you get to walk on stage and perform live in front of hundreds to thousands of people? That also applies to the bodybuilders that I have on the show. What is that feeling like for you when you get to walk on stage and show off all that hard work that you've worked months upon months to even years on?
It's such an exhilarating feeling. I would have to say, they say like you're on cloud nine. I think it's like you're flowing. Like I said, you're becoming one with the stage. It's like you're not even there. Like you're walking. Like I said, you're walking on clouds. It's when you come off that it's like the rush of endorphins that have come on and the excitement, because you're really nervous before and you're just trying to stay calm, cool, and collective. And then you get on stage and you do your thing. And if it just, God willing, goes right, you come off and you're just like, you're happy, so happy.
I always say, if you can find something that gives you that, I mean, stick with it, because I think so many people try throughout their lives to find that feeling and they don't. But I mean, just stick with it. But there's so many things that people I think aren't aware of when they first start following people on Instagram, the health and fitness people. Probably the biggest one that I get all the time, even from friends, is that they don't believe that you guys can't maintain that look year round, because so many people, I think, just because they might be showing photos of what they look like in their off season, they might show some prep photos just to just because just to keep the positive vibes for people that are trying. And I think a lot of people also, when they see shows like Biggest Loser or Big Brother, or no, yes, these shows like Biggest Loser, I should say, where people just go on and they just lose a ton of weight and they're able to keep it off. I think a lot of people associate that with bodybuilding too, where they just think, hey, if they can keep the weight off, these bodybuilders that work their butt off, they can still maintain that look. But what was that experience like for you when you first learned? I mean, you're not going to be able to look this way 24/7. And there are a lot of people that try, but it usually shortens their career, and it really is not healthy for you to be at that low of a body fat percentage and be at that, that look for an extended period of time. But what was that like when you realized you are going to have to put on weight, and that all that hard work that you put into it, I mean, you can't maintain it?
Yes, that definitely has. I always tell myself, yes, that it's not that is not a sustainable look. It's also not healthy to stay that way forever. So, with proper reverse dieting, I'm not blowing up like a balloon. I probably we're keeping my weight within, it's the way, of course, I'm looking as well, about a 10-pound range from my stage weight. So I mean, normally I sit between like 140 pounds, my own weight. And then like on stage weight, I'm about 129, 128. So I don't really have to like dip that low, because I'm very careful during, mindful, I want to say, during the year as well. Okay. So like my coach has me having a cheat meal once a week. I'm still eating all the foods that I like, but I love, again, to eat clean. That's just the way that my body performs better when I'm eating clean. Whereas I had a cheat meal the other night, I thought I was gonna die. So I would prefer to cheat clean than to cheat dirty. My body responds a lot better that way. So
Yeah, I mean, that is probably the biggest struggle that we get on this podcast all the time, though, is, just dealing with that aspect. I just think I always like to compare it to starting a business. I mean, you got to spend money to make money. You got to put on weight if you want to put on muscle. I mean, that those two just go hand in hand. But two of the questions that I love to ask also, I mean, they're probably two of my favorite questions if I admit it so myself. But for the first one, I mean, there were so many positive things that happened to me when I started working out and getting in shape and getting bigger and stronger. But one of the negative things is that you're going to get asked to move a lot of people's furniture. You're going to get asked to open a lot of pickle jars or bottled water or anything that's sealed on tight. You just basically become the muscles of the group for everyone. And, I'm still at home with my parents for the next couple of months before I move out. But every single time they come in with groceries, I basically have to lift the car into the driveway and carrying the groceries myself. Has that
me.
has that been a similar experience with you? Where, I mean, the way that you look now, and I mean, as you have got into bodybuilding, where people just expect you to do favors for them?
I would have to say yes and no. My husband wasn't doing too well. He had a bad back. And that's funny that you said that because I just had to go downstairs and grab a whole bunch of boxes because my daughter is getting a new bed. So I'm like, really? Do I have to be the moving man now too? So it is nonstop. I mean, I'm always like getting myself into some sort of mischievous, I call it mischievous, doing things and coming home with tons of groceries. I'm like, I could have gotten the cart. Why am I doing this? But yeah.
Yeah, it's always a never ending, and especially being taller too. I mean, I always said, if I had zero muscle at all, they'd just be like, "Oh, hey, tall guy, go and help move that." So yeah, it's a double edged sword for sure. But going off that question too, I mean, you're not the average looking 53-year-old woman. I mean, most 53-year-old women are not able to look like that. What is that like when you walk in public? I mean, we hear all these stories about, people get reactions. I mean, it's just fascinating for the general public to see someone like that. What has your experience been like when it comes to, maybe some stares or some reactions that you get if you were to walk out in public like you dressed like you are right now?
Well, yes, I do get stares. But then you have some people that I guess they stereotype you in a negative way, but then there's others who I'll have like women come up to me and go, "You have they'll touch my arm in the grocery store. You have the most gorgeous arms I've ever seen." And when they say that, I know that like things are coming together well. And it's nice. It's motivation to keep going, to keep setting a precedence for women, like, all women around the world, young or older than me, or my age group. So, and they're like, "What do you do? I bet you don't eat anything. You must starve yourself." I'm like, "No, I eat. I eat a lot of food." They're like, "No way." They don't believe it. They don't believe it.
That's one reaction that I used to get in college all the time, was that girls would always come up and start feeling my arms without even asking. I'd be like, "Oh yeah, that's my arm," but I was vain back then, so I'd pump it up for them a little bit. I'm not gonna lie here, but yeah, I always like say, you just basically come like a human art exhibit when you walk out in public. I mean, where everyone,
Yes.
they're just fascinated by it. But my favorite question to ask, and the audience favorite, is, there's so many difficulties that come with being a bodybuilder, but one aspect that I don't think is ever really talked about is that your clothing options can be very limited. I mean,
Oh,
for men, they have their own specific needs, but for women especially, I mean, I always say, like, jeans are not going to be your best friend if you have a big lower body and a small waist. I mean, if you have any development of a shoulder or arms at all, I mean, dresses are not going to be your best friend either. How have been some ways that you have found that you're able to compensate for the fact that your clothing options can be very limited at times?
spandex. Seriously, I it's so funny because when I was working in, as a businesswoman, I mean, I would have the most gorgeous like skirts and this that. Well, not anymore. Like my closet is solely workout clothes. I mean, right now it's again funny that you said that because I'm just going through like a rehaul of all my workout clothes, and I'm like, okay, I got to get rid of this, or maybe I should get more of that. It's amazing because I live in leggings. I live in like my workout clothes. I'm like, I don't know what it's like. I had to go to my daughter's fashion show. I'm like, what am I going to wear? I can't wear workout clothes. This is not right.
I always say you basically have two wardrobes. You have your prep wardrobe and you have your off-season wardrobe. Basically, when you
Yeah.
when you're in a body, that's basically I mean, and everything. Different sizes for everything. So yeah, your wardrobe does get very down pat. And like you said, yeah, like yoga pants and all that stuff are probably the number one thing that everyone that I talk to, I mean, just lives by and swears by. But now you're also a mom, and I always say, being a mom, that is a full-time job in and of itself, and just being a bodybuilder, it takes up so much time. Are there any time management skills that you've developed over the years as to how you're able to get all this stuff done in a day?
Remember what I told you? It's like ADD gone wild. So, and the multitasking is beyond the Poseidon adventure. Like first thing in the morning, I have a routine. Like you're mopping, you're scrubbing, you're cleaning, you're doing everything because I don't have any help. So my kids, thank goodness, well, are at an age where they can take care of themselves, although they still depend on mommy a lot. Um, so it's a routine, like you said. I get up, I have a routine. I train in the mornings because by nighttime I'm exhausted, and I cook every night. There's dinner put on my table every night. So like the kids by like 3 o'clock, hey mom, what are we having for dinner tonight? So I'm already thinking, okay, I got to get this, I got to get that. Thank God for Instacart because because I can now order all my groceries online instead of spending half my time in the store where I could be training or doing something at home. And then in addition to that, I'm finishing up my degree, my second degree in exercise science. So it's a lot. It's a lot to gamble.
I honestly I can't even imagine doing that. That just sounds like stress to the max for me. But how important is it for you two to also, you know, portray this image, you know, that you can be healthy and fit, you know, at any age, and that you can, you know, be strong and you can be, you know, independent. How important is that for you to serve as that, you know, inspiration for your kids so that they're inspired and motivated to maybe make changes in their lives as well?
I mean, that is like of such high regard to me. I'm always, I don't pressure them because I want them to make the steps on their own, just as I did as a kid. I just think that it's really important for them to find an outlet. You know, whereas like my son, he does like to play video games. So I'm like, you know, we have a gym where we live. How convenient is that? Just, you know, go downstairs. I give him little hints and tidbits here and there, but my daughter, she's cute because she'll go with me to like all my competitions, and she's proud. She's very proud of her mommy, and that, I'm gonna cry. It makes me feel so good. It makes me want to keep going and pushing and setting a precedence like that for them. um and like I said, they will come around, they will find their own way without me having to push them, but maybe unconsciously they're seeing it through me. So we'll see.
And with this hectic life, I always say the most undervalued thing when it comes to recovery that people don't talk about is sleep. It is so important. I mean, I always say I had the number one sleep specialist on the planet on this podcast. He called all the way from the UK, and first of all, he had one of those British accents where you felt like you gained 10 IQ points just from talking to him, where you were just like, keep talking. Like I saw him. I was like, I'm not gonna say a word. I'm just gonna introduce you, and then you're gonna talk the whole damn time because you know, it's just like a workout to my ears, basically. But yeah, we were talking about the importance of sleep, and how do you manage to get the proper amount of sleep if you do? Because with your hectic life, I mean, if you're able to get your proper amount of sleep, you know, I want to know your secrets. But what is your sleep schedule like, and how do you go about that?
Well, okay, so by the time I settle down at nighttime, you know, I'm still like wired out from going 24/7 full throttle all day long. So I get, you know, I'm getting into bed, I'm watching some TV from some shows, I'm turning off my phone, but most of all, I would say I don't sleep very well. I think it's a lot. Well, a lot has to do with menopause, and my age. But like, I'll sleep well some nights, and then other nights I won't. But then who knows? Like some nights I'm like a rock, you know, where you can't wake me up. But that's one of my hardest and most troublesome things in my life is my sleep. And that's so important to, like you said, growing the muscle, putting on that lean mass, because, you know, everything is healing in the nighttime. I mean, you're growing, you're renewing,
I,
regenerating, I want to call it.
I always say there's almost no better feeling in the world than after like a good long workout, if you get that proper amount of sleep and you wake up the next morning feeling like a superhero, basically, because you're just so well rested. That's why I always, you know, like my grandpa always told me this advice. He says, you know, if you're ever in a tough spot, you ever need to make a decision, just take a nice long sleep, and you know, things will sound clear. And that's, you know, the best piece of advice that I've ever gotten in my life. I mean, sleep is just so undervalued, and I think especially in this society where, I mean, with this all this technology, I mean, I find myself, you know, having trouble sleeping, and a lot of people my generation do. But now, if someone were to walk up to you and say, you know, Janine, we made the decision, you can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding and everyone would go along with it, what would be one thing that you would like to see changed?
What would be one thing that I would like to see changed? The sport of bodybuilding. What would I like to change? Um, I don't know. I mean, because I mean, I love to, I know not everyone says this, but I actually love when I'm in prep. It's keeping me much more grounded and focused, I would have to say. But like everyone says that they have a hard time with the nutrition. Like they'll ask me, "What's your hardest, the most difficult thing?" It's probably the nutrition. I'm like, no, the nutrition is like the easiest part for me. Um, I don't really know. because everyone is different the way they perceive the world of bodybuilding, and so for me, my aspect of it, I wouldn't change a thing. um,
Well, that's why I love asking that question because we get a wide variety of answers. Where I mean, some people talk about like maybe the judging, like where they might need to want to define better like overall like what they want in a package. Because I always said if you were to compete in back-to-back shows on back-to-back weekends, you might get first place in one show, and then the next show they're like, oh, we want a little bit more leaner, we want a little bit more fuller look, and it's like,
which
well, good luck changing that in a week then.
exactly, which has happened to me, but now with because Sandy is usually the head judge when I go to my shows. And what I love about Sandy is that she's very consistent in the look that she wants. So when I went for my first show that I started in the season, yes, it was like a total, I was like depleted, like beyond the Poseidon Adventure. It was the look that, my coach was trying to bring in from my friend who had won her pro card at Universe. So, but that they weren't looking for that. They were looking for something, they were looking for fuller. And I didn't have that. I looked like I was like a bodybuilder, on stage. So then when I went, from that first show, it was feed, 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 feed. And my metabolism was trying to play catch up where I could never fill. But I did fill for my last show, which was, what is it? Whatchamacallit? What was my last show that I did?
Hang on, let me just check my memory because I know everything about her bodybuilding career.
Not completed, I promise. Oh my gosh. What did hello, I was in Pittsburgh. I can't even remember what my last show was. But anyway.
I'm gonna tell a little secret for everyone. I secretly, I know every one of my guest schedules and what they've done in their life ever since they were born. So I just had to jog my memory a little bit.
I gotta jog my memory. Anyway, so from my last show, so I finally filled in my last show, and but Sandy, those three shows that I did, Sandy was so consistent in the look that she wanted, and I actually sat down with her finally to get my critique, and she's like, "No, Janine," she goes, "You did amazing," and she was so cute because she goes, "You won everybody from the front." She goes, "All you have to do is get that glute, just fill the glutes more, fuller glutes." So that's my hard part.
Well, you're preaching to the choir. I mean, yeah, just the legs and the lower body. I mean, that is just a pain in the butt to grow. No pun intended. But yeah, it's I absolutely, yeah, I dread leg days, but yeah, you have to do it. You have to get it done. But you mentioned before that you lift heavy. So what are some of your best lifts?
Oh my gosh, my best lifts. I love to deadlift. Um, I love rack pulls for back. Back is probably my favorite day. Um, what else do I love to do? Squatting now because I'm getting a lot heavier in my squat. So that I love.
I was gonna say if you like the back day, you should be doing pull ups all the time and stuff like that.
Yes, well, I do a lot of. I mean, I love to do pull-ups and getting better at those. Where I do not have to be. I remember I used to have to start assisted, no more assisted, so that's nice. But basically, the heavy lifts, are the deadlifts, the rack pulls, the squats. What
What's
else?
your best squat that you've done?
Okay, so my best squat that I've done right now is 185. Yeah. And that's still like I want to build on that. And I love hip thrusting. All right. So right now, like this week, I was so happy I hit 235 in the hip thrust for 8 reps though. So that's still not my 1 rep max. But that's getting better. And that means what? My glutes are getting stronger because I couldn't even do that at the beginning. Nothing.
No, I'm gonna get yelled at if I don't ask this because everyone's gonna say like, "Oh my god, her arms are so great." What do you do for your arms to work out?
Well, basically I have my, an arms and abs day. So, anything like, well, again, another weak link of mine were my delts. So, because I always had triceps and biceps, but it was my delts. So I didn't have delts, I didn't have glutes and calves, like you said. So I have to work on all those areas and my hamstrings. But arms, I'm doing like push-ups and everything. I do a lot. I love to incorporate the bands in the arms, like you said, time under tension. Um, I like a lot of isolation movements. That's really good.
I always tell people, especially for arms, push-ups are very undervalued because they work the triceps almost as much as they work the pecs. I mean,
Yes,
you kill two birds with one stone. So that's why people say, like, I used to do push-ups all, like, before every workout. I'd do 12 sets of 10 reps or something like that, or do something like that. Where then everyone would be like, why'd you do that? And it's like, well, because it's a warm-up, especially on arm day. I mean,
right.
that's a nice warm-up to do. So yeah, I mean, it's yeah, and
And it's always great to incorporate a body weight movement because body weight's tough. And what I love to do as well, I've been working a lot because I'm TRX certified, so I'm working a lot with the TRX, especially with my abs because like I've been doing like abs, all like these, all the sit ups and then the gill curl ups, and I wasn't like feeling it. So now I started incorporating the TRX again, and the other day, oh my god, abs on fire. So I really felt it.
everyone go on her Instagram page. I'll leave a link down below, and you can see look at her abs, and you'll just get pissed off because you're like, God, 52 years old. This is absolutely ridiculous. Like it's just come on, that's just absolutely insane. But yeah, I mean, just mixing things up, it's and just just the type of workouts that you do. I mean, everyone's so different. But as you've gone on in your journey, I mean, the fitness industry is one thing that I always say evolves constantly. What do you think have been some of the biggest changes that you've seen in the industry as a whole since before when you got started as to now?
Oh my. Okay, so my first competition, they didn't even have a over 50. So that was, I mean, a major plus for me. I remember my first competition, I wound up placing fifth alongside like all these younger girls. And I was like, whoa, did I really just do that? I mean, there's no way. So that kind of, boosted my confidence a little bit. But now it's even better is that, okay, I'm going to be 53 and all these younger 50s are coming into my group who are probably going to, have fuller glutes than me. So they kind of have like collagen on their side, whereas I'm like losing the collagen. Mine is the fight against it. So it's nice to see now that they're offering a bikini over 55. So I'm thinking, okay, if I can't get my pro card yet, I have 2 more years to keep. I can keep trying. So there's, more. It's more motivation to keep on going. I think it's nice that the NPC and IFBB league is opening up the doors to the older generation.
You know,
So
and like I said before, it's evolving so constantly. I mean, I had a guest on who started, in the early 2000s, and he was talking about, how all these divisions didn't even exist. I mean, it's just the changes that have been made in this sport are just so vast. But now, if we were to talk to you a year from today, what are some goals that you would like to have achieved? What are some things that you would like to have accomplished if we were to talk a year from today?
wow, my goal, of course, is probably a lot of girls' goals who are competing in the NPC level, but especially I would love to get my pro card. I've been at this since my first show. I was 47 years old, with about a 2 year break in between. But now I've been competing consistently, only on a national level because that's what my coach wants me to do. Um, so yes, I would love. My goal is to get my pro card. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, and that's off. And again, like we wish you nothing but the best in that. And it's just, I mean, I love having competitors come on, and just with winning the pro card in and of itself. I mean, that is the highlight of so many people's careers. That I mean, I just love hearing those stories, and I think you're gonna do great. I mean, everyone go and check her out on Instagram. Like I said, I'll leave the link down below. But is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
I would love, of course, to shout out my coach, Casey M. Fit, for bringing my best at each and every show, and we still have my best to come. So she's done wonders with me. She's there for me whenever she's at my beckoning call. I would have to say, she's a great support. Independently and team wise, I couldn't have chosen better. So,
Shout out to her too, and I'll leave a link if she has an Instagram down below too as well. But lastly, I mean, for any moms out there, because we've had a lot of moms on the podcast that get in shape. Do you have any advice for any moms out there that are thinking about getting started in fitness? Because we hear a lot of times, about mom guilt, where they feel like they might be spending way too much time away from their families. But what advice do you have for any moms out there who are looking to get started in adapting a more healthy lifestyle?
there's always I remember when my kids were younger. Where there's a will, there's a way. I mean, if I had to put a gym in my house, which I did when the kids were younger, I did. I mean, if I had to just put a bench and some weights, and do some videos online, because everything is at your fingertips now. You can just pull up a YouTube video and start working out with some weights. That's what I did when my kids, were like, just totally all over me, and I didn't have any time to breathe. I would call it. Um, I would stick them in their high chairs let them play in the room, and I would be working out, or use them to work out with. I mean, like I said, where there's a will, there's a way. If you want it bad enough, you'll do it. So I mean, without my training, I would be a disaster.
Yeah, and it's just such a positive thing for so many people, and if that's one thing that I could take there that I could share out of this podcast, it's that find what keeps you going and what really helps you get through the day, and stick with it. But again, Janine, we cannot thank you enough for coming on the podcast and sharing your journey. I mean, it was so great talking to you. And do you know when you're going to compete next? Do you have a date set in mind?
I do. So my first show is well. Here's what I may be doing. There's a local show because my mom can't travel and neither can my stepdad. So I want my mom to be able to see me on stage again. So I'm going to do the Miami Muscle Beach contest run by Giovanni Paula and Anna Dang, and then that's local. And then I'll go to nationals in New Jersey, Teaneck, New Jersey, and I'll do Team Universe.
That is awesome. And again, we wish you nothing but the best of luck. And everyone, I'll leave a link down below for all of her stuff. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.